rise, we'll have Mrs. Karen.
I'm going to read from the scriptures from 2 Chronicles. And the Lord appeared to Solomon by night and said unto him, I have heard thy prayer, and have chosen this place to myself for an house of sacrifice. If I shut up heaven, that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Now mine eyes shall be open and mine ears attent unto the prayer that is made in this place. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Before we move on, I'm going to read the rules of decorum for a council meeting. Citizens and other visitors attending Van Alstyne City Council meetings and other city and Van Alstyne public meetings shall at all times conduct themselves with decorum and with respect for the proceedings, the public officials, and all persons present. Any person who makes abusive, disrespectful, indecent, irrelevant, profane, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous while addressing the presiding body or while attending a public meeting shall be removed from the room by the city manager or designated staff member, if so directed by the preceding officer or by city council action. The person shall be barred from further audience before the presiding body for the remainder of the meeting. Remarks from unrecognized speakers, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, and similar disruptive behavior shall not be permitted by the presiding officer, who may direct the city manager or designated staff member to remove such persons from the room. Signs and placards shall not be permitted in the meeting chambers. Aggravated cases and behavior constituting the elements of hindering proceedings by disorderly conduct, disrupting a meeting or procession, or other violations of the Texas Penal Code or other applicable law shall be prosecuted on appropriate complaint in accordance with the law. These rules are not intended to infringe on any lawful expression of freedom of speech by any person. We do have some citizens' comments. We have Councilman Jim Smith who would like to speak.
For the record, my name is Jim Smith. I'm speaking tonight because I'm concerned about the current hiring practices of the city of Van Alstyne. I asked for this issue to be placed on tonight's agenda, but the mayor refused my request. It should be the goal of the city to hire the best qualified, the most experienced department heads available for the job. If a job is not posted to allow individuals to submit a resume, how do we know we have the best person for the job? We cannot let personal emotions determine the best person for the job. It has to be a fair and legal process that decides the most qualified person. Every one of you, every one of us on the council, we're elected to do what's best for the city, not to allow decisions to be made that could result in damage or embarrassment to the city. Thank you for this time to express my concern, and I hope everyone on the council and the public will work to keep in mind what's best for the city of Van Alstyne. Thank you.
I like to tell people it's just like both, but with a P as in poker. And since I went ahead and mentioned the game, I don't suppose there's a local game where I would be welcome and invited, and if there is, talk to me later, please. The reason I came this evening, this is my first time, I'm the newbie in town, Grant Pope. I live 709 Elm Circle, which is Graywood Heights, as I understand it to be known here in Van Alstyne. Been here for a little over 3 years. The reason and why I'm here is a long story which has nothing to do with why I'm here to speak. I'm here to speak specifically about what was the city of Van Alstyne thinking when they developed, and here because of my sketchy memory and brain injury, Graywood Drive. When Graywood Drive was built and paved the way it was, all the cul-de-sacs, the first one to your left is Elm Circle. That is where I live and reside. And yes, I am a homeowner. Yes, bought it in 2000. The reasons for moving here would probably bring me to tears, but that's Graywood Drive and Spence Road. I am the first left cul-de-sac when entering onto Graywood Drive. The next cul-de-sac on the left is just like mine. Gravel. My neighbors that live to my right are the sweetest elderly couple I have ever met. And in my opinion, they have the best looking house or property on Elm Circle. But they suffer constantly. I'm talking 11 months a year out of water sitting at the end of their driveway, running down a drainage ditch behind all our houses, which by my carpenter, used to be union carpenter back in my working days before my accident, sees that, well, that runs uphill. How's this water supposed to drain and go that way? And the city of Van Alstyne, since I have lived here, has dealt with that, bringing a little track hoe by and using the simple hoe to dig out that water placement. And I got to thinking, well, why is it running that way? Why is it running to that brand new high school across the street from where I live? Well, my neighbor tells me that's uphill too. But those are one of the two things where I am asking the city of Van Alstyne and who designed it and is in charge of taking care of it. Why am I not paved curb to curb? Why does my neighbor across the street have lawn growing outside his curb line in the cul-de-sac, which is gravel, not paved like the rest of Van Alstyne? And as far as the drainage goes, I noticed the city finally showed up with a backhoe and an operator one day, and yeah, that certainly helped. But one time, and this happened to be in the summer, but I'm sure come summer again, the CDC would probably have plenty to say about that standing water. So those were my comments. Please pave my road, my cul-de-sac, like every other cul-de-sac in the neighborhood. And please take care of this standing water, constant standing water. Yeah, I understand it's February, Texoma land, giddy up. This is the kind of weather I grew up with. By the way, if I had mentioned it, I did grow up here and have lived in many states in my career. But yeah, I grew up in Tanglewood back when Highport Marina was in low voice, CD low, Baybo low. And what that has to do with what I'm talking about goes my sketchy gray matter these days. But again, please, curb to curb, Elm Circle, and the following cul-de-sac. Pave it like the rest of the neighborhood, please. And figure out something to do. If it's one employee, one hard hat, earning a living, operating a tiny backhoe, removing this drainage water. Giddy up, please. And by the way, at first I wanted to say, howdy y'all. And if anybody takes offense to that or anything else, I'm sorry, but that's just me. Get to know me. Simple-minded, simple man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Dale and Melissa Arnold. Say it again.
We're gonna wait until we hear the agenda.
We don't have a
Not yet.
Okay, Mr. Thad Jennings.
Thad Jennings, live in Georgetown, stays out here. I was under the understanding that tonight one of the meeting minutes or one of the votes is going to be building code and the times associated with that for new construction. I just wanted to voice my opinion on it. I don't know if a lot of people know how it's going or what's going on with it. I know I heard some people that were worried about if they wanted to mow their yard after 7 o'clock they could. I'm hoping that this doesn't affect that, but the code I understand now, after having an experience where we had new construction going on at about 10 o'clock at night, right next door to our house where we're trying to get elementary kids to sleep. Chainsaws running, hammer drills running, making lots of noise. And I know that being in the construction business, 99% of the towns now have Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. building code times. And excuse me. So I just wanted to make sure the council understood that that was a part of the code compliance stuff that we wanted to see changed, so that we don't have, hammering and nails and saws and stuff running at 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday night or school night. Also, I think it'll probably affect theft problems that are occurring on the same situation of the brand new house next door, that contractors were allowed up there at 10 o'clock at night and they lost refrigerator, oven, dishwasher, all of a brand new house. Mr. Bryce can probably talk to that issue. So I just wanted to be sure, like I said, I know some people are like, this is Van Alstyne, it's a small town, we can mow our yard after 7, it doesn't have anything to do with those kind of issues. But we have school children and people don't need to be of, some of the questionable contractors that are in there building some of those houses really don't have any business running around in neighborhoods at 10:30 at night building houses. So I wanted to just address my issue with it. Thank you.
Are there any other citizens comments? Moving on to public hearings, and we have no public hearings this evening. The consent agenda, approval of the minutes from the January 8, 2013 regular meeting. The council has received a copy of that prior to the meeting to go over to see if there's any issues or changes.
Just wanted to point out, on item number 14 in the minutes, Ms. Weber advised me that the very last sentence, it says straighten, it should be strengthen. And I have the exact quote, so I will edit that at the council's desire.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as adjustment.
I have a motion by Councilman Smith to approve the minutes with the one adjustment. Do I have a second? Councilman Tuber seconds. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to regular agenda non-consent. We will now recognize Chief Barnes for his years of service to the Van Alstyne Police Department.
Mayor and Council, this is to recognize Chief Barnes for his 20 years of service to the city of Alstyne.
This is really nice. Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank y'all.
We do have a box here for your.
Okay.
That's really nice. Okay, moving on to number 8, consider and take any action necessary regarding a resolution approving the terms and conditions of a criminal justice grant application authorizing the chief of police to submit application.
Mayor and Council. Chief Barnes.
Mayor, Council, I'm going to try to apply for a grant, for the second console for communication. If you remember back in the budget, we did purchase one, and we needed a second one for redundancy. And I'm wanting the authorization to apply for a grant through the criminal justice TCOG, which will be no cost to the city. It's required that we come before the governing body to ask for approval for the grant. Go forward.
Any questions?
If you get that grant, will that reduce the cost of the first one?
No, the first one's already been purchased. This will just help in the next year's budget for us not to come forward to the council for the secondary console.
Will we have to pay the $49,000 for the second one?
No, sir. The cost for the grant, well, we've already paid the 29 for the first console that was budgeted. The second console, because some of the components will be used for the second that's already installed with the first one, it comes to $23,689.40, which is what the grant will be applied for.
And will there be any city contribution on that?
No, it's not there.
Was any grant money available for the first one?
No.
How did this
Yeah.
come about?
Well, every year at this same time, if y'all remember last year, the ones who were on council, we applied for a patrol unit. This year, we're going to try for the console. There's only roughly a little bit under $30,000 that was given to all 3 counties. I know there's 16 law enforcement agencies just in this county. So there's not a lot of funding that's coming from Austin. So we're going to give it a try and hopefully that we can acquire the funds.
Have a motion?
Make a motion we allow the chief to apply for the grant.
Have a motion by Councilman Flake. Do you have a second? Second by Councilman Smith. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We will move on to number 8. Presentation by the Chief of Police regarding the annual racial profiling report.
Annually, the law states that I need to report to the council, the governing body, for the racial profiling. In the package, y'all were supplied with the numbers that were provided to the state. This is done through every department in the state of Texas. So, if I have any questions regarding that, that's the numbers that were supplied to the state.
What's co-partial?
You'd have to ask people down in Austin. I'm not
Oh,
really
okay.
sure.
Are there any questions?
You don't require a motion for the chief.
No, there's no motion. It just states that we have to provide it to the council.
Okay, we're moving on to number 10. Consider taking action necessary regarding approval of ordinance regarding filming in the city of Van Alstyne. And the council has a copy of that. And we have, Ms. Laura got this to address that issue.
You may be familiar with White Wright had a feature film in their community a few months ago. It brought them quite a bit of economic activity. And they had to pass a filming ordinance in order to be sure that they had processes for that film. And they managed to get it passed before the film started. And it all worked out very well with their time frame. But this doesn't always happen. So I approached the mayor to see if we could be proactive and have a filming ordinance that we would be ready and welcoming for potential production for film, television, commercials, things of that nature. And she said yes, so I did some research with the Texas Film Commission and with the people in White Wright who were involved with their production. And it's a great way for us to attract publicity to investors, economic activity at no cost to us. They pay money to use your building, they pay money to rent your facilities, they rent props, they rent costumes, they spend money in town. White Wright had 40 people in town for 6 weeks. And the ordinance just, gives us a permit process. It gives guidelines so that they know what to expect, and they're based on the model guidelines from the Texas Film Commission. So when producers see that ordinance, they'll know what they're working with, and they'll know they're welcome, and the city, has liability protection, and their costs will be deferred from the processing of the applications and so forth. It also allows the city the exclusive right, to use our logo and our name, and to, give permission for that, so we own that. The Texas Film Commission's a free resource for us. If we ever have any questions, the city can call, the EDC can call, and they'll answer any questions about whether something's right or normal, or whether or not an inquiry is legitimate or not. And I believe what we talked about was the EDC office being the major point of contact, the first point of contact for the Texas Film Commission to call, and then, of course, permits are issued from City Hall as any other permit would. Again, the permit process only applies, of course, to public streets, public right-of-way, public property, not to productions that occur in private property where they're not using city streets, city resources. Does anyone have any questions? Because you have somebody here who worked on the White Wright project and was their president of the chamber at the time.
What about the smaller, lower budget filming companies that don't have a budget for permits?
The permit's only $25, and the ordinance even gives City Hall authorization to not charge for a nonprofit or for any other reason. They don't have to, they can waive the permit, but it's only $25.
I read 500.
That's for a violation.
We have had a number of videos filmed in Van Alstyne with local musicians. And this, I'm afraid, will discourage that activity because their budget's going to allow to pay for police or fire, or they're not going to block off streets. I worry that we will discourage these small, lower budget operators.
If they don't block off streets, if they don't use city resources, there's no permitting involved. So if they wanted to film, for example, at a home, and there's plenty of parking, and they park at the home, and they film on the home, and they leave, the city doesn't get involved.
If they film on the streets of Van Alstyne, the Coca-Cola sign is a popular place. If they film at Dorothyville Park, and this is what's included in this, the city property.
If they're filming on city property, though, I think you really want to have your liability protected, because they have to sign a waiver, and they have to provide, insurance.
One of the people that asked to speak tonight is familiar with the process of filming. She's done a lot of work for Ron White, local musician. I think we need to get another side, another take on this, just so we can have the objective about it and from a different direction. Hollywood is less likely to find us than local North Texas filming crews.
And that's intention, actually, this process was, we were told that 30 miles from the city center, we are to expect smaller budgets, commercials, reality TV, things of that nature, and we need a process that people know what to expect. It's also much easier for the staff so they know what to expect. But, fees can be waived, and the whole point is to work with the city, and have a process to work with the city, and the city is not going to be, difficult for a small production. It's going to be over a few hours. I mean, if they close streets, there's a process for that anyway. I mean, they have to get, know, we've done that with parades and fall off, things of that nature, so.
Did the people running Balderall have to pay for closing the streets?
I don't know. The point is that, you know, the Texas Film Commission's coming out here in the spring. They're sending a scout, they're gonna be taking pictures. There's a database where we can submit pictures and in their format and be included all the other towns that have ordinances. And, you know, we won't be able to attract economic activity from filming if we're not ready, if we don't have a process, if we're not in the database, if we're not on the Texas Film Commission's radar. And they're very easy to work with, but they're not gonna refer people to us if we don't have a process and we're not ready. Because they can go somewhere else that has a process, and I assure you, most of the towns around here do. And White Wright is expecting a couple more productions to come, and some of these will be in the area, so they could film here. But White Wright has benefited, it's had a big, you know, ripple effect, them getting ready and being film friendly and being welcoming. They are getting more productions out of this and more activity.
Mayor, could we hear from another party? It's already signed up.
Yeah, and then I would like for Mr. Brett to share his experience, but let's let, the Arnolds.
Speak.
Is that something? Miss Melissa Arnold?
My concern is, this is all wonderful for feature film, but it's also including music videos and stuff. There's a huge underground of music in the Walls area, some great people who promote this town freely. And what brings everybody to Van Alstyne are these free advertisements. Well, we did a music video here for Robbie White 4 years ago, and it's brought all kinds of interest. And my question is the definition of, if somebody's standing, if I take my camera and I stand outside the Coca-Cola sign and take a picture, am I gonna get arrested? The definitions of what is allowed and what is not, because the Texas Film Commission is a big entity, and I'm all for them coming to town. But what about the rest of us? Are we gonna benefit, are we gonna be hindered?
Well, that's exactly what she was talking about, is that I mean, as long as it goes through City Hall, and, I mean, there can be waivers for, to not have a permit, but, you know, as long as it's gone through City Hall.
Well, I mean, who's gonna keep this under wraps? I mean, there are so many great cameras. My mother got a camera, $900 camera, didn't know what she was doing with it. If she's standing out there taking pictures, she's gonna get in trouble, she's gonna get fined. What makes a professional? Who are y'all gonna go after if they don't have a permit? Is my question. I don't think there's enough definition into it of what is and is not allowed.
I agree. It sounded to me when I read it like we didn't want anyone to come and film.
It's too vague.
And, you know, I felt it sounds like we need a no filming ordinance rather than this thing, because to me, it was just so burdensome and cumbersome that it's not friendly at all.
You mentioned that a video 4 years ago, and other interests to be on there. What other interests have those been? What other interests have those been in the past year?
Well, we run a website called Highway Engineer. We used to be in Sherman, we're now in Van Alstyne. But it seems like every time we wanted to bring somebody to see something claim, we chose Van Alstyne. That's how we got Robbie White.
So he done a video 4 years ago?
He did.
And what's been done
But
since then?
we took about, I don't know, he still promotes it. I mean, it's all over the place. Most people don't even know Van Alstyne until they go, yeah, we heard you road.
What other videos have been done since then? That's my question.
Oh, videos? Well,
You said if you already done the maintenance.
We've done photo shoots. We did some engagement pictures out on the tractor, on the highway. We've done a poster for another musician called Jared Magila outside on the square. One lady who wanted a video by the fountain, we did that a few years ago, but we just didn't promote it.
But did you shut down roads?
No.
Okay, so that, I mean, that's really not an issue. You're not shutting down the road.
So that's what I'm saying. The defining factor is if I have 10 people with me and we walk down Van Alstyne, down into somewhere in the city, and I have somebody pose for a picture, I don't need a permit for that.
I mean, that would be just like a photographer photographer going to the rail cars to take pictures of somebody's wedding pictures.
Right.
You don't have to have a permit for that.
Okay. So if I take, if I run a musician and I say, okay, we're gonna walk down Van Alstyne sidewalk, and I'm filming them and I'm talking to them and I'm taking film of them and I add that to something else, then we permit for that.
Let's put a caveat on that. If you're going to interfere with the normal day-to-day business of regular citizens, yes, you need to come get a permit and you need to show that you have liability insurance.
So it won't affect anybody then.
Then you have nothing to do with it.
Right.
Okay.
Then should that be included?
That's what he just said.
Yeah, that's.
This is a template from the Texas Food Commission. This is not anything that should be dreamed up. This is a template that they present. It's a general guideline, a general ordinance to be adopted. If there's any guidance that y'all would like to give, we'll listen to it. But it's not to hinder anything. But it's to make it to where day-to-day citizens can not interfere. And there's an economic benefit to the city to shut down for a major project.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I'm just saying, be careful that you weigh the balance, because I've seen it where people run in and they think, they want it to be bigger, they want it to be better, but then you start charging people, people just go somewhere else.
It's true.
So, I don't know if there's a major film feature coming here, but Take into
We have just as much
consideration.
chance as white.
yeah, well, we're showing with other people what like. So, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mayor, could I maybe try to think of another way to explain it that may help people more clearly understand if they need a permit or not? If you want to take your camera to the park and take pictures or even shoot something with a video camera, then that's fine. But if you need the park to be shut down so that nobody else comes in the park to, get in your movie scene, that's when you need a permit. Or if you need the street shut down and not anyone allowed on the street because only people in the movie or in the video need to be on the street while you're filming, that's when you need a permit. But if you're just doing it and it doesn't matter that other people are going about their business, that's not a permit situation. Does that help kind of clarify a little bit?
So I think that needs to be included then in this, and I think we ought to table until it's revised.
Is it worded to where that
It says commercial use that affects the use of public property or adjacent private property. But, we could make it clearer since not everybody was getting that out of it.
I think we need to have it in the ordinance, written into the ordinance that we approve, as opposed to saying, well, except this.
Or you can apply for it.
The discussion that we've had tonight isn't going to help anybody when somebody says you got to have a permit, and you don't have that permit. We need to have the wording of the ordinance exactly what we intend to execute, as opposed to the banner back and forth here.
Because it says case-by-case basis. Well, who decides that case by case, and will there be favoritism or whatever? So I think that it does need to be clarified.
We have one thing that's helping us right now, and we don't want to discourage that. We don't want to eliminate that. But the odds of a Hollywood music or a Hollywood filming crew coming to Van Alstyne is lower than the fact that the local people that are promoting our town and helping give exposure to our town, we don't want to discourage that. We don't want to give up one for the possibility of having another. And I think it needs to be worded so it's very clear and there's no ambiguity.
Yes.
Is there any time frame on when we have to have this done?
No, I just want to be proactive.
Okay.
Because if they're coming there, they're going to come. There's a possibility they'll come out here. But we do need to have it done because the scout is coming when it starts to green up, and it would be best for us to be ready.
So, when is it, do we do that?
In a couple, she said the spring.
Okay,
we can have it revised by the next meeting.
okay.
So we're gonna table this issue to, be more
Inclusive, Inclusive.
inclusive on how the ordinance is written.
You need a motion for that? Is Julie clear exactly which articles need clarification?
Yes, sir.
Do I have a motion to table this item?
I make a motion to table it.
A motion by Councilman Smith to table it for further clarification. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Kluber. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to consider and take any action necessary regarding appointments to the Van Alstyne Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors. And we have Mr. Arthur Atterbury, who is the Economic Development Board.
Do we want to hear the gentleman's comments before we go on to another?
The white.
The gentleman from White Rice, to get his input on this? Or do we want to wait?
No, I'm happy to or not, either way.
You have anything to add to the conversation, or?
Well, just that as opposed to applying for grants constantly, which I've noticed about small town Texas, it's a proactive approach to put yourself in a position to be available without excluding the locals or making them have to pay to be able to do their business. I get that, I wouldn't want that either. But just to be ready in case they did, because we didn't expect it to happen. But it did, and we had to jump, and everyone was willing to work together regardless of their differences. We all worked together to make everything happen. And hopefully this spring, the movie makes it out. White Ride is actually in the script. It's part of the movie now. We'll see. It could end up going to DVD and you never hear from it. You don't know. But the economic, as the president of the Chamber of Commerce as I was, the economic impact was significant, especially because we made them cater with our chamber businesses. They didn't do all the catering through just our chamber businesses, but probably 80–90% was our chamber members got the business. It was about bringing money into the community. Again, not excluding the locals, but actually just inviting someone from outside to come in and invest in the community. And that's, it's just, it worked out. We had that many people, that many weeks. There were no arrests. There was nothing broken or stolen. Several people went to the emergency room for heat exhaustion. They're from California. But overall, it was a positive experience.
I just appreciate you being here because, we could steal your next film.
And please do. I like Van Alstyne. Please do.
Your Honor, we in no way want to hinder anything that has to do with keeping anything away from Van Alstyne. We want to bring it.
Thank you for this.
Thank you. Okay, we have Mr. Arthur Atterbury, who the Economic Board has already approved to be on their board, and the council, the next step is for the council to approve that appointment. Mr. Atterbury, do you want to come up and tell us why you want to be on the board?
It's here.
I'm going to have a bigger impact if you do this.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I'm a resident of Van Alstyne and have been since April of 1999. Not been very involved in city functions here because I spent my career in the South. I was a deputy in Collin County for 27 years. Retired in 2009 and kind of took a back seat after being involved in politics every 4 years. So I've decided to revive myself again and resurrect myself again and begin being more involved in the community. I've seen the growth that happened in Collin County over the 27 years that I was there and have a great respect for that. I hold the Texas Real Estate Salesperson's License that is currently on inactive status with the Texas Real Estate Commission, and it's renewable in August of this year. I feel like having a son in school here and being part of the community, having lived here for the last 14 years, I'd like to be instrumental in helping make decisions that promote our city that increase our economic opportunities and educational opportunities. Thank you.
And just so the public knows, Mr. Atterbury physically will be taking my spot on the board. I'll be stepping down as an interim board member. Do you have any questions for Mr. Atterbury? Do you have a motion to approve?
Madam Mayor, I recommend or make the motion that we approve Mr. Atterbury for the economic
I have a motion by Councilman Toomer. Do you have a second?
I second.
Second by Councilman Craig. All in favor? Opposed?
I will abstain for the consistent with our,
Councilman Smith abstains. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Atterbury, for being willing to serve. We will now consider and take any action necessary regarding authorizing advertisement of a depository request for proposal.
Mayor and Council, looking at, I got the RFP for bank depository services. Looking at our last agreement, we performed back in 2009, is that correct?
The last depository agreement the city had expired in December of 2008.
2008, okay. By local government code, it's supposed to be performed every 5 years, is that correct?
I don't recall if it gives a length, but it does say that the city shall designate a bank, a credit union to hold the funds.
So in the interest of giving all of our institutions an opportunity to participate, requested to go out for RFPs for banking.
How have we operated without? What is different after this is done and what we've done in the past without?
I haven't reviewed extensively the agreement that we have, but I believe that the interest rate was reduced when the agreement ended. Other than that, I don't know that there's any difference.
Didn't we go to each bank every time we had an event where we had to have, we needed?
As far as a loan?
We would have to go to each one individually, is that, and get bids on?
We did take out bids, or go out for bids on loans, but this is basically just saying, where do we want to keep all of our funds? Where do we want to do our day-to-day banking business?
Who houses the majority of our funds, the city funds at this point?
Which of the banks are the funds in?
Texas Star.
This is 2 to 5 year basis. Are we going to specify 2, 3, 4, or 5 years?
That's up to council. What you want to choose.
So shouldn't that be determined before we go out for bids so the banks know?
What would be your, what would you want to do?
My recommendation would be a 2-year basis.
And this action tonight is just to authorize us to receive bids. Is that my understanding?
And that's what
I believe
was
it said it.
recommended in here.
It says 2 years in the contract.
But in our background information, performed on a 2 to 5 year basis.
That's what's been in the past.
That's the standard.
We did put in a 2 year from April 2013 to March 2015. An additional 1 year off.
And we'll see the bids next council meeting and approve then. Is that?
Yes, sir, the calendar of events is on the first page.
Is that enough time to give all institutions time to respond to RFP?
Because we advertised the 15th, we can get it running ASAP. March 1st would be when we have to have the proposal received by 5 p.m. And then March 12th, which is a regular scheduled council meeting, and review the recommendation of city council. Y'all may vote, or y'all may defer for further action.
identify all the institutions you're going to utilize in the policy?
Well, that's important. We'll contact the local institutions, but that's what we're going to do. Anybody can get an institution outside of the community.
That's right.
Of course, part of the evaluation we do, we want to go somewhere outside of the community.
I entertain a motion to open up for the RFP.
I saw a motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Jennings, do I have a second? Second by Councilman Clay, all in favor? Opposed, motion passes. We will move on to item number 13, consider and take any action necessary regarding Van Alstyne noise regulation ordinance number 439.
I would like to speak to this. There were some citizens that were not here tonight. I have had other calls. And Mr. Jennings did speak tonight. I think there was some misunderstanding. We discussed this last month. This is not about mowing the yards, citizens mowing the yards. This is more to do with new home construction in residential areas where residents are trying to go to bed and have small children trying to sleep. And at 10 p.m. is not a reason to allow people to do that type of work. I would like to make a motion that we table this until such time we go back, reduce the hours to 9 p.m., and explicitly write a clause that addresses new home construction in residential areas and limit it to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Well, I disagree with that, and I think that if you want this up in Georgia.
There is a motion on the
Yeah.
table, so I have to address that.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Mayor, I'm sorry, can you repeat the motion so I make sure I have it down?
I would like to make a motion to alter the time to 9 p.m. as currently written.
You said table it.
I want to table. I made a motion to table this to rewrite the ordinance as written out to 9 p.m. in the evening and to add a clause specifically to new home residential construction in residential areas. And that be limited 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. all days of the week.
I do have a motion on the table, is there a second? Motion dies for a second. Is there any other discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we table this issue for further discussion until next month.
I thought we picked on something.
I mean, that's what John's asking to do, is to table the issue for further discussion, and we can discuss the times. I don't necessarily have a problem with the times, but we need to table the issue so we can have further discussion.
I'm just asking, shouldn't it make more sense to go ahead and have a discussion and determine what we want, and then we can send it back to them to rewrite it instead of tabling it to next time and discuss the times again? That we could discuss right now. I mean, if we're gonna discuss them, why not go ahead and discuss what I'm asking? Yeah, you already know what people's
We need to
opinions
have
are.
action on it tonight, whether it's approval or disapproval, but John's initial comment was to table.
Yeah. I just should go ahead and discuss it.
If we can discuss and make changes, then I would take my motion to change the hours of the 9 p.m. We can add a clause specifically addressing new construction in residential areas, either move to 7 a.m.
Well-
to 7 p.m.
Well, okay.
Before you make a motion like that, there is this ordinance here that we're supposed to be talking about, and I think that it's only appropriate that we discuss the one that is without having your motion there to make some more changes on it. Wait till it's discussed and then only make a motion.
The way it is written is the way you requested it to be written last time, when you tabled it again. And you asked for consistency, that's what you asked for.
Yeah, I asked for
And there's not
consistency.
consistency in this.
Well, there are two different times, I agree.
Exactly.
it also says in this that's in front of us, to operate any motor vehicle without operating lawnmower to engage in construction.
That's it.
Are we striking the lawnmower thing out of that, or?
That says community. I said, there's not an issue with running lawnmower.
But you combined, in paragraph 8, you've combined lawnmower and construction in the same paragraph.
That whole portion can be revised.
That needs to be revised. That's why I want to add a clause specifically for construction.
Well, my objection to that is that if I'm an individual and I'm building a house and building it myself, a lot of times the evening is the only time I get an opportunity to go work on my house. I know that might be a little disadvantage to the neighborhood, but that's my only opportunity at that Saturday and Sunday to go work on it. And I think the people ought to have the right to go work on their own property to try to build a thing, so that's why I don't have any problem with 10 o'clock, and I don't, you know, that's a good cutoff time to say that you can't work past that. But at least allows them to get 2 or 3 hours in the evening working on something. That's my opinion on that.
I'm not sure where we're getting off on this deal. My issue with this is that it should be addressed not in a noise issue, but in a building permits situation, a construction permit situation. And if you individually are building a house in Georgetown, you're already breaking some sort of law. So that's not what we're talking about. You're talking about a section of land where you go out and have a piece of land out in the country to build your own house is fine and dandy. I'm talking about a builder who has to have a permit.
There's a plumber in town that he built a lot of stuff up on Bryn Mawr in Georgetown, that he built a lot of the stuff on his house. And in the evenings, him and his dad were up there working on it, things like that. So that would have been an owner working on his house in an addition like ours.
But he should have gotten a building permit to do that.
Well, he got a building permit, but yeah.
And
it wouldn't have done him any better if you got a building permit, and now on the building permit, we decide you can't work past 7 o'clock. That still gives them no chance to go work on it. I know, I know.
I mean,
How long does it take to build a house, and how many children does it disadvantage? Is it, a month, 4 weeks maybe to get the house up where this type of noise is going on? I think it's tolerable.
well, we're talking about a year now, and it's affected about 7 or 8 children for 2 to 3 nights a week for 3 or 4 months.
Couldn't the homeowners association then put some restrictions there instead of putting something like this on the entire city?
No, ma'am.
A year on a single house?
Huh?
A year on a single house?
No, the 3 or 4 that went around the same
Okay.
single.
Yeah, okay.
What if the time was from 7 to 8 with that?
Well, I mean, if the city wants to allow that kind of people building in their city at 10 o'clock and let brand new refrigerators and brand new washers and dryers and kids be left alone and sleeping, it says enough for your vote. I mean, it's pretty much a non-issue in my opinion. Every other city within a rock's throw of here has this exact ordinance. So how it can be such a problem to build your house from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I can't comprehend letting it affect 6-year-old girls in kindergarten trying to go to sleep in their bedroom at night. Or the parents worrying about the people that are across the street building a house. I mean, I don't know how it can even be a discussion.
Well, I will comment here because I do live in Georgetown, and I do know the standard of construction workers that are in our neighborhood after dark and before dark are not the most desirable people that you want in your neighborhood before dark or after dark. And the majority of them do not speak English. The majority of them play their music. It hasn't affected me. I'm an adult. But they play their music decibels that are beyond what we should all have to deal with, and they can't understand you to tell them to turn it down.
I believe that we just did a discrimination statement there. It's not the people.
It's a fact.
We can't pass ordinances based on
someone's nationality.
It's based on,
And you just made that statement.
it's
It's
based
not-
on noise.
It ain't about nationality.
It has nothing to do with nationality, it's based on noise.
That's not what I would like to say. In Georgetown, right now, we have a deal holding, and I'm glad they're rebuilding. But they're busting lots. I said, this morning I was around, there's about 6 lots busted. And I also know some of these lots, there's no silk fence up, and there's mud and dirt laying down the street. Swamp fences. There are violations of the law, because these houses are going up. But when you break 5 or 6 lots like that, and yes, you have framers out there, it's not uncommon to be framing 50 houses. So we're not talking about an individual that's in there working on his house, and we're talking about 2 or 3 crews that are in there framing homes, and they're putting up sheetrock, running generators, running lights, running steel saws, running hammer, running all this stuff. And 2 o'clock at night is late, especially during these kind of hours when children are going to bed up. It's not like, and it's going on continually. We all workers in our building fast and furious right now. And it's not. Then this needs to be in a building code as opposed to a noise ordinance for the whole, that's the whole city.
Yes.
I
thought that's what it was, because it should be addressing the building permit.
Let me finish what I was saying. This needs to be on a building ordinance as opposed to a noise ordinance that includes the entire city and lawn noise.
Then you're gonna, what I think they want is a DR Horton ordinance.
Yeah.
They don't want, because it's not fair to.
It isn't fair.
I know, but you can't write a DR Horton ordinance, but I'm just
We're
saying.
lucky to have DR Horton.
I know, I'm not suggesting writing.
We
a
are
DR
lucky to
Horton
have DR
ordinance.
Horton here, but
And we-
if you go to Sherman or Dennis and everywhere else, their construction codes are 17 and
Well, I don't
They
think we
do not
should try to
want to
stifle building.
I'm sorry, I can't allow you to speak because you didn't sign up for this agenda item. I know that you want to, but I can't.
Mayor and Council, the reason that this brought to y'all as a noise ordinance was that's the West Virginia and was an architect institution involved. We have a building code ordinance. If that's what we want to do.
well, and we need to have, and I've preached this for the whole time I've been here, is buildings being built without proper supervision from inspectors. It's been going on forever. And it's always goes back to the inspectors not there to be sure that things are done right. We depend on Bureau Veritas to do that, and if they can't do it, we need to find a company that will, or we, as the city, need to enforce the building codes. This needs to be brought back to the council as a building ordinance. Additions or corrections or additions to a building code as opposed to an ordinance.
Because if we make it 8 to 8 or whatever you're suggesting, what about the football games? You know, they'll have to stop at 8 o'clock because of the noise.
I mean, kids
And
aren't-
what is the decibel level?
Kids aren't going to sleep for the football game. There also needs to be a decibel level here, something that can be judged or monitored.
Someone who is doing construction work has to get a building permit. It has, whether the time restriction is in a noise ordinance or in the building code isn't going to make any difference. Either way, it's going to apply to anybody who is doing construction work. I think if it's in an ordinance separate from the building code, then it helps to be able to have another enforcement tool for the person who failed to get a building permit. What are you going to do if someone should have gotten a building permit and they didn't get one? And, you know, at least now you have this ordinance to say you're violating an ordinance and you need to stop.
Well, if they don't have a building permit, they can stop construction if they don't have a permit.
They should, but it's separate. I mean, under the building code, you're going to issue a stop work order. If you have an ordinance, you can actually write them a ticket. It'd be like getting a traffic citation, where they would go to municipal court.
But they wouldn't have to stop them if they didn't have a permit. They just get a ticket for the noise.
It wouldn't affect their building permit. They would be told to stop. I think code enforcement usually tries to give a warning first and help to educate that you shouldn't be doing this. It's not their goal on their first contact to try to give someone a ticket usually. It's usually to try to help them understand what the rules are. So they can make that first contact, let them know they're violating the rule, tell them, you can't be working at this time or running that equipment at this time. And it doesn't affect their building permit. They're not being given a stop. I mean, if they give them a stop work order at 10:30, when the crew shows up at 7 in the morning, that stop work order is still there.
I have a solution to my part of the issue, which is the concept of an owner of a house being able to work on his own property. We just add a clause in there that says if you own the property, then you can work till 10 o'clock. And you have different hours than what construction crews do when they come in and do a major thing. Therefore, that covers the one that I'm worried about.
And you're probably not operating as many pieces of equipment as a whole crew.
No,
would
I
be
have a lot less like to it, and I have probably have kids of my own, and I'm saying to not have them be up all night and that kind of stuff too, maybe.
So you want them on personal property, so
If it's their personal property, then they can, their time would be between, 6 in the morning, or 7 in the morning and 10 o'clock at night. Which is kind of hours of their line of work. Does that make sense, John?
That's what Aaron did not like last time, was putting specific written
Oh, okay.
Oh, no,
regulations and rules and
I'm for that.
Well, she'll take it now because I wasn't there last time.
That's not what I said
It got too
last month.
complicated. You said it was too complicated when we started changing hours and making inconsistent hours.
Well, and he is staying with consistent hours. The 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., which is what my recommendation then was. So it is definitely consistent with my thought process.
And we're rolling 10 p.m. back to what?
We're not rolling 10 p.m.
Well,
back.
for regular construction crews, then we could roll that back to, your suggestion is 8?
I say 8 p.m.
8 p.m., okay, I could live with that. Like the old work on my truck. Now, my only question on that is the 6 o'clock earlier.
Well, it
To
may be
allow
a
the-
PR
allow workers to
ordinance
work.
because
I
they're.
don't-
Well, I agree with you. That was my point.
Rules are approved by Monday. During the
Well,
time-
it's 6 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
early enough, okay.
Oh, yeah. Rules are
Reference-
generally, they start at 6, they're approved by Monday.
Okay, so, I didn't know they didn't start earlier than 6.
No.
Okay.
They're ready.
I've had them camped out in my yard before at 5 o'clock. And it sure sounded like they were up there before 6, but I don't know. Not this house.
Okay, so the ordinance for,
I'd just like to add that statement into,
if you're building your own home, if it's
it's a construction occurring upon your own home, or your own property, your own property.
From
Yeah,
6
not
a.m.
home.
to 10 p.m.
Yes,
Okay. If you're a commercial builder, it's from 6 a.m. to
8
8
p.m.
p.m.
Right.
That makes it a New York ordinance.
That makes, no,
That's because
that means if I hire a contractor to build my house inside the city limits, if I hire an individual contractor inside the city limits to build my house, he's gotta live under that 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock rule. Because he's got time to work on it during the day, hopefully. He's not just doing it as a part-time deal.
So are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion that be added to the thing, that Frank's writing down, so that next time we discuss it.
Jennifer's got the official, but just making sure. Okay, so you're talking about, we're talking about consistency. So the parking, storage, repairing of motor vehicles, motorized equipment, between the hours of 10 and 6 now. And then, so we're going to 10 to 6 on all 3 of these?
Yes.
And there will be another, number 10, I guess, after number 9, that will specifically state, commercial construction may take place between the hours of 6 to 8 p.m. Is that what y'all want?
Well, number 9 talks about birds and stuff.
I understand, sir. I'm talking about
10.
making a
Is that
number 10. And number
Okay.
10,
For
that specifically
commercial.
states if it's your personal property,
Yeah.
or no,
Could we just at the end of each one of these, number 5, number 7, number 8, and then just put
Unless it's your personal
by property owner.
However you want to do it.
That's just state by property owners at the end, which allows property owners to do any one of those kinds of things. Do that. Does that make sense, Bill?
I'm not,
In other words, if department stores are repairing any motor vehicle or any motorized equipment between the hours of 10 and 6 a.m. and any motors left in operation from the period of time by property owners.
Personal property.
By personal property. Just put that at the end of each one of them.
Okay.
That makes it only apply to the owner of the property. You're gonna have people coming in saying, I'm the tenant, I don't own the property.
Yeah,
You can't.
that won't work.
How would you suggest that we handle it?
I think what Frank was saying, you add a new category. My only question is that for residential construction only or residential and
Business.
commercial? Or all construction?
I would think all.
Yeah, because in the city, we want growth, we don't want Alstyne growth.
Most of your resident, most of your commercial will not be next door. The
Right.
kids try to go to sleep at night anyway.
That's right.
You know. They're too close on your property.
So we're going to strike the number 5 about we're not going to address motor vehicles.
No, I don't, I think we leave that in and just change.
Just change the time to
The time to
6.
6 a.m. and like everybody else.
Okay. And
And number 7, make it 6 a.m. And the only one that would be different is the one that Frank would add, that would be for owners of property that do construction on their own property, they can do it between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes, well, number 8, we will make, when it speaks to construction or demolition work and has the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., we'll designate that one's commercial.
So 7 would become the mower, the lawnmower.
Well, it could
And
be
then
two,
eight would
it
become
could be the
commercial.
lawnmower and then engage in any construction or demolition, in any commercial construction or demolition work. We'd add the word commercial to number 8 and then add a number 10 to talk about the residential times.
In the interest of commercial construction, y'all probably want to make it similar to residential because on the other side of Kelly Lane is already rebuilt commercial. So it will impact the neighborhoods in some shape. But that's up to y'all.
But that we can always change from that.
You're more welcome to come back and talk about this.
So is there a motion to
I just
set it
So
this
moved.
way?
I need an explanation of number 3, the horn honking. When can I honk the horn and when can I honk? I didn't know it was regulations against it. I assume that's what this is about, right?
Yeah, we took out the train to blow its whistle.
Oh, okay.
We,
we think it's okay for the train to go.
So,
who determines what is too loud
I don't know.
is my question.
Well, I guess when you get enough complaints from the citizens. I mean, that's what started this whole thing.
But you have to have a decibel level that's acceptable and unacceptable.
And can be measured.
And can be measured. There has to be a measurable ordinance. And the police department can have, or code enforcement, or whoever's doing it, you can buy decibel meters at Radio Shack. But there has to be a bar set of what's loud and what's not loud, because you're gonna have people with different people enforcing different opinions. You have to have a bar set for what's the acceptable decibel level. And I don't know what the decibel level would be. I can't imagine having an ordinance that is just, well, if it's too loud, You can't enforce it. And Chief, I'm looking at you. You can't enforce an ordinance that just says too loud. It has to be decibel. It has to be a decibel. There has to be a common.
Yeah, most of these don't speak to the volume, they just say you shall not do it between 10 PM and
Yeah.
6 AM.
Well, the construction is. But looking on your car.
Horn honking.
Play music too loud?
Yeah.
What's too loud?
What's too loud?
This
Exactly.
is a noise ordinance, it's not a building ordinance. If somebody's playing their music too loud, what's too loud?
So this would be on her from more than 50 feet from the building, is that right, Chief?
Yeah. Normal ordinances that you know, from other cities, probably when you're talking about radio, they do have decimals. I don't know what those are, but, of course, we would have to buy something that would, you know, register that, but, I'm not familiar what the decimal would be, for enforcement, but.
Can you find out for us?
I think Frisco has some decibels in their ordinance.
Because I can hear the
See how that's
football field
working.
on football nights downtown. I mean, that's more than 50 feet, so. All I'm saying is we have to be careful when we create ordinances. If this guy right over there, it's got to enforce them. And we've got to give him all of the tools. If we're going to pass an ordinance, we've got to give him all the tools to enforce it. The changes that Jennifer has been taking notes and Frank's been taking notes, and the question about decibels, can this be rewritten and submitted to us so we can look at it and not depend on notes here and there?
It's not talking about this, it's talking about the operation. It's not an operation.
This is a noise.
People go by my house to get aggravated about dogs.
And loud music and as disturbing, as disruption, as a neighborhood. We need to be sure that we're choosing things and not just taking little snippets of what we do. I'd like to see it rewritten and include the decibel level that you find, that Julie finds has been acceptable, that the meters are very expensive. We've got to give Chief Warren some tools to operate.
I agree. So does this mean I can't honk my horn to tell my neighbor I want to have him come out and do it?
Come out and what?
Go with me somewhere? I go in front of his house and I.
Yes.
As long as Chief Warren's not on your block, you can.
Oh, then I'm good. But neighbor.
Actually, honking the horn is already addressed in the transportation code.
I'd like to see it rewritten, and I can make a motion that we table it tonight and have the adjustments, rewriting done, Julie's input on it, and have it presented to us next time.
Is there anything else on here that we need to tell them we'd like to do, Chief? I don't have any.
Well, if we can get this ordinance to us sooner than just in a packet, have the rewriting, the rewording done, and get it to us sooner so we can make comments back and forth to the city hall, and maybe have some of these things worked out before we actually sit down
These
here.
are able to meetings, we gotta make comments.
Well, could you redevelop it and then email it to all of us? As soon as you get it ready.
And each one of us individually make comments back.
Yeah, then we can comment back and
Julie,
80% of them agree on one thing.
let Julie address it.
I would email it to you all for informational purposes earlier than when you would receive it in the packet, so that way you have more time
Okay.
to review it. Definitely don't reply to all or engage in discussion, but absolutely we can get it to you early.
So I have a motion that we can,
Julie's doing that one.
I have a motion by Council Smith to table this barring further information. I have a second by Councilman Weaver. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes to table it. We do not have an executive session.
Oh, yes. We've had a busy month this last month. We actually passed our state environmental water quality test. And inspector actually said it's the first time in 15 years that we actually passed with no violations. We also had a pretty active week on main water leaks.
Yeah.
There was a lot of late-hour candlelight burning, and we run in one place and been patched 3 times, and there was no space between each patch. Got temporary that morning, and got back in that late that night, and replaced the section that bad. For 121, Highway 121, we got that sewer fixed. Our schedule right now looks like we have one in the morning, another sewer line fixed, but it's not in a major highway. And we actually have a culvert, where we got to cut the whole road out and replace the culvert in it, because it's collapsing due to the pipes leaking. And then next week we have the orbiter being replaced at the wastewater plant, and the UV is supposed to be the following week. So hopefully we can get all this taken care of and get the environmental people satisfied in the wastewater and water. I do have I will say that all the endeavors that are taking place is not one person, it is the whole crew of the Public Works Department. And I really appreciate them and the inspections. I appreciate Jennifer and Shay and everybody else that worked together to get all the information for the inspection.
I just thought I'd give you a little recap of the amnesty month from January. We did send out 21 letters regarding 67 items. We got 11 back, which was, particularly the DVDs were some of our best ones, so we were definitely glad to have those back. Of the people who brought them back, they all were thankful for the letter because they thought one spouse or the other had returned them, and they were in a box in the kids' room, and things like that. Also, they, some of them had late fees on their accounts, and they paid those off. So while it was not an overwhelming success, I think it was worth the time and the effort for what we got back. Also, Team Council had a gaming tournament last Friday night. We had 72 people show up. So it was quite a success. Thank you.
Councilman Smith?
Nope.
Mayor, council, attendees, did receive a letter from Allied Waste regarding the CPI increase in the contract. The CPI increase is going to be 2.60%. Stated that it's going to be, you will see a 34-cent increase in your refuse, solid waste bills. That's correct.
Yes, sir. I, as the mayor, do have a couple of comments here. I'm going to address Councilman Smith's comments at the beginning of the meeting. In all of the research on what a city council's responsibilities are, there's basically 3 responsibilities that a city councilman has, and that is to set policy, to set the budget that is presented by the city manager, and to hire and fire the city manager. And the city council is not to have anything to do with city staff or the employment of city staff. That is the city manager's responsibility. That is what we hire the city manager to do. And that's what I have to say. And I trust that we have a city manager that is going to be responsible for the decisions that are made. Do I have a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned. Second.
All in favor?
All in favor, 7:57.